This should have been one of the greatest rivalries in WWE history. Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, the Shield breakup. Everything was there. The story, the history, the emotion. So how did this rivalry not even come close to its potential? Now, to really get into the meat and potatoes of this, we have to go back to the Shield, and we have to talk about how important the Shield truly was to this era of WWE. The Shield wasn't just a faction. There's lots of factions in wrestling. It was the faction of the 2010s. It was the D-Generation X, NWO evolution of its era. I'm not saying it's as big or impactful as those. Maybe you'd argue that it is, and if you do, I'm not going to argue with you. But for this era of wrestling, that's what it was. Three guys that were built together from the ground up. They dominated WWE together. They owned the company for all of 2013. They built trust with the audience as this unstoppable faction. When somebody was in the ring and you heard that music, you knew shit was about to go down. But then in 2014, after running through Evolution 2 pay-per-views in a row, we got the split. The chair shot that was heard around the world, as Michael Cole loves to call it, the Shield chair, a name we all groan when we hear, but it does have significance. And it has been a tool that they've used over the years when calling back to this moment. So I do think it's important, maybe come up with a better name than Shield chair. I'm just saying, I'm just suggesting. Steal my ideas if you must. You don't have to credit me. Seth Rollins would betray Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns. He'd put the chair into Roman's back and become one of the biggest heels in the company. Now, what's interesting at the time is it was speculated that this was going to happen, but at the time we all thought it was going to be Dean Ambrose. We all thought Roman was going to break off and be the top baby face. Ambrose was going to break off and be the top heel. And we didn't really know what was going to happen with Rollins. I remember the conversations online at the time. A lot of people just kind of thought maybe he'd flounder in the mid-card. They had the least hope for him of the three, and it was nothing against him, an incredible talent, great wrestler, but Roman was the guy that the company wanted to push to the top, and we all know that, and Ambrose was the one who we all thought would be just that ultimate foil, that evil heel. He just had that in him. He has that characteristic. If you know Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, it just makes sense. And if you know Moxley's history, it made all the sense in the world. But they subverted expectations, and Rollins was the guy who took the bait, who joined the Authority, became their guy, the Future, and stabbed his brothers in the back. I remember exactly where I was watching this moment live. It was incredible. It was shocking. Truly a wrestling moment that will go in infamy for an entire generation of fans. And instantly you have heat, and instantly you have a story here. And this is where the rivalry really should have taken off initially. Now, what I find kind of interesting, what I found interesting about this when it happened, was the company kind of went into this direction with Rollins and Ambrose, despite the fact that Rollins put the chair into Reigns' back first. But they went Rollins and Ambrose, which makes sense. But what I found kind of odd is they went right for Roman Randy, and they had Roman the next week when they were cutting the promo be pissed at Randy. I'm like, it just seemed like Roman kind of was like, okay, well Dean's dealing with Seth, so I gotta deal with Randy. Like, dude, you should be pissed too. You're the one who took the chair in the back. I just found that odd that they kind of went in that direction, and they kind of prolonged the Rollins Reigns stuff for much later on. But nevertheless, we got a really hot start, and there was so much anticipation for this feud, and Ambrose was really getting over as this scrappy baby face, like really getting over. In fact, people wanted to see Ambrose more than they wanted to see Reigns, which the company, I'm sure, was not a fan of. Maybe why they neutered this feud a little bit. Maybe, just maybe. Somebody get me my tinfoil hat. I'm in conspiracy territory. Ambrose was this chaotic, unpredictable babyface. Rollins was the cowardly, calculated heel that had the Authority backing him. It was such an easy dynamic. It was like trying to replicate the Austin versus the Corporation thing, just to a much smaller scale. I'm not calling Ambrose Steve Austin. I'm not, I promise. But it was like a modern version of that. You had Rollins, the corporate heel, and then you had Ambrose, who was kind of the buck the system babyface that was a little more goofy than he probably ought to be, but I'm sure the kids loved it, so what can you do? And for weeks, it was brawls, it was chaos, it was Ambrose trying to find new creative ways to get to Rollins, and that's really the meat and potatoes of this feud, and how you really tell that story is you want Ambrose to be chasing Rollins, and every time he's about to get get his hands on Rollins, or he's about to get that, it's pulled away. That's how you build that anticipation, that hype, that drive to want to see it, where you dangle that carrot, where it's like, we're almost there, and then you pull it away. Then we're almost there, then we pull it away. That's just classic storytelling. You don't want to give the people what they want up front. You want to build to it, build to it, build to it, build to it, and then when you get it, you have this big climax. That's wrestling. Simple. It's not difficult. SummerSlam a few months away, the perfect destination to have that story, but we have some time to play. Now, I recall this match was supposed to happen at Battleground. I'm like, why are we blowing this off? Why are we doing this at Battleground? Battleground. Especially that time. I mean, there had only been one Battleground, and it was bad. Ground. I'll see myself out. Wasn't a good show, though. That was the one where Big Show came out and screwed over the main event. Unfortunate creative. Battleground 2014, I don't remember being a ton better, but I guess we got a clean finish in the main event. But in the main event, you had Cena, Roman, Randy, and Kane in a four-way for the championship. Roman had already moved on. He didn't even care about Seth at this point. But right when it was getting hot and we're about to get that match, we ended up getting some sort of segment, but it's just prolonging it because we're trying to get to SummerSlam. I get it. You want to save it. You want to save it for the big show. I understand why they chose to do that, but at the same time, God, I feel like there was just probably more creative ways they could have got us from A to B, but nevertheless, we got the brawl at Battleground. And what this led to was Money in the Bank. So upon editing this, I have realized that I made a bit of a mistake here. Money in the Bank actually happened before Battleground. So I completely remembering this and not in order. So Seth Rollins was already Mr. Money in the Bank at Battleground. John Cena had already won the championship. So nothing I said here technically is wrong. I just chronologically got it wrong. And I feel like if I mix it up in the edit, it's going to look stupid. So just understand that that's my bad. In 2014, there were two matches. You had one, which was for the championship because Daniel Bryan had to forfeit the championship. So you had a Money in the Bank ladder match for the title, which had Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, John Cena, Bray Wyatt, Cesaro. Not going to name the whole field, but lots of top guys. Then you had the Money in the Bank match for the briefcase, and you had a hodgepodge of people in that match: Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. And the interesting thing about this Money in the Bank match is it's probably the most predictable Money in the Bank match that has ever existed. Nobody in that match, other than Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, were going to potentially win. And why, when you're telling this story of Dean chasing Seth, and Seth being the heel, the cowardly heel, the authority heel, why would you have Dean Ambrose win? So it really was a match that only one guy could win. Seth Rollins wins the briefcase. Kane screws over Dean Ambrose. Now Seth Rollins has Money in the Bank. Now we can move towards SummerSlam. But on the way to SummerSlam, the way they were telling this story, it just felt so start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. It was very weird. The heat was still there. It was still intriguing, but I just felt like in so many ways they just kept halting it. They were trying to tell you that the Roman Randy stuff, the stuff Roman was doing was a level above it. And Dean Ambrose almost felt like kind of a side character that the fans really wanted to see, but the company was like, we're gonna get through this so we can get to the bigger one, the Roman Rollins, because we want Roman in that spot. That's at least how I felt at the time as a fan watching this. But once we ended up getting to SummerSlam, we got a lumberjack match. I don't know about you guys, and correct me if you disagree, and if you disagree, that's totally fine. We can have disagreements. I think lumberjack matches are stupid. I hate them. I groan when I see them. I fast forward. I don't care for them. If you want to tell the story of two guys who you want to keep in the ring, and you want, like, this feud has to be settled, and we got to keep the action inside, or whatever it may be, put them in a cage. Like, just put them in a cage match. A lumberjack match where we just bring out all the mid-carders to look like bums? No, it's stupid. I hate it. I hate lumberjack matches so much, and this is how we start this feud. The first match in this feud is a damn lumberjack, and to give them credit, it was not bad. It was actually pretty decent because it's Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. They're going to have a great match. But put them in a cage or something. Like, why does it have to be a lumberjack? I don't know. But Seth Rollins got the victory here. And then we moved on, and they did this angle on TV where Dean Ambrose got stomped with his head in the center blocks, and he got pulled from TV. And it was actually a really good, well-done angle, but they ended up moving right on after this to Rollins and Reigns because they saw how much people were getting interested in the Ambrose and Rollins thing. So it's like, wait, maybe if we just put Roman in there, maybe the people are going to start feeling that way about him, the way they're feeling about Ambrose. Conspiracy cap is firmly placed upon my head, but that's how I feel. That's how I felt. That's how I still feel. Let me know how you feel, but I know how they were operating at the time. To quote the great Phil Brooks, we got to make Roman look really, really strong. But the match that was supposed to happen at Night of Champions did not end up happening because Roman had a hernia injury. He was pulled from TV. He was gone until the rest of the year. So now you have Rollins with nobody to work with. So at this point, you got to bring Dean Ambrose back. Just in time for the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Now, I've talked about this. I will continue to talk about this. I hate gimmick pay-per-views, always have, always will. They suck, but in this case, it kind of worked because you have a feud that deserves Hell in a Cell. The only problem is Seth Rollins was getting his nose in other people's business. John Cena's business, Brock Lesnar's business. He tried to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase at Night of Champions during Brock Lesnar and John Cena. Failed to do so, but in doing so, he cost John Cena the championship. So now John Cena wants a piece of Seth Rollins. Well, that's a problem because we don't want that match. We have another match that we want to see happen inside Hell in a Cell. And at the time, I really thought they were going to give this to John Cena because if there was one person that the company wanted fans to get behind, not named Roman Reigns, it was John Cena. So this feud that has all these legs between Ambrose and Rollins, if we can't give that stock to Roman, let's give it to Cena. Because screw Dean Ambrose. But thankfully the fans won. There was a contract on a pole match because pole matches are a thing still somehow. Please don't ever do a pole match again. But Ambrose won and we got it. Hell in a Cell, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. And I find this funny because even though John Cena lost this match, he ended up getting a match with Randy Orton in Hell in a Cell where the winner of that match got a WWE Championship opportunity at the Royal Rumble. So even though he lost the opportunity to fight Seth, he gets put in another Hell in a Cell match with actual stakes for a championship opportunity. So even though he lost, he really got the bigger prize. But the nice thing is they gave Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose the main event inside Hell in a Cell. And man, I would love to sit here and tell you, wow, this is one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches of all time. It was brutal. It was barbaric. It fit the name of Hell in a Cell. It was iconic. It was the end of a blood feud. It was just a WWE no disqualification match with some kendo sticks, some chairs, some weapons inside a cell. I don't remember this match. And this match with the feud and the hype behind it should have been one of the best, but it wasn't even one that I remember. I remember the John Cena Randy Orton cell match from that night more than I remember Ambrose and Rollins. I might be one of the only ones. Maybe you're looking at this like, I loved that match. You're crazy. Okay, that's not how I feel. I watched it live. I wasn't moved. And one of the reasons I wasn't moved was because of the finish. Because there was not a clean finish. A hologram of Bray Wyatt appeared. Bray Wyatt interfered and cost Dean Ambrose the match. So Seth Rollins was able to escape the feud, Mr. Money in the Bank, and Dean Ambrose gets moved into a feud with Bray Wyatt. It just felt like we didn't get a definitive end. We got a transition to get Dean Ambrose away from Seth Rollins. Rollins ended up going to fight John Cena, and Dean Ambrose got a mediocre feud with Bray Wyatt where he lost every match. After losing every match to Rollins, now he's losing to Bray Wyatt. And the guy was over, like very over. People wanted Dean Ambrose, and they booked him like garbage. WrestleMania 31, he was barely even an important factor on the card. He was just a guy in that Intercontinental Championship ladder match. Like it just felt like it was unimportant. And the fans at the time were telling you that we love this guy, but you just didn't care. This was the guy we wanted at the time, but that wasn't the guy you wanted. So you just pushed him to the side, had him lose every opportunity he had, and tried your hardest to cool him off. It didn't work, thankfully, but no wonder this guy got so sick of this company. Unfortunately, that was not the end of the Rollins-Ambrose feud, but that was when it was at its hottest. That was when there was the most hatred, the most fuel, the most vitriol, the most anticipation to see it, and you had already hit that peak of Hell in a Cell. How are you going to top that? Now, they've had better matches since then, but you had an opportunity to make a really good impression, make 2 stars out of that feud, and really cement both guys as main event guys. And you cemented one kind of, and the other you made look like shit. So 2015, we revisit the feud. Now Seth Rollins is the WWE champion and Dean Ambrose the challenger. And once again, what do you think happened? Dean Ambrose lost. Elimination Chamber, they did the title match. They had like a disqualification, but then the ref took a bump, and then Ambrose got the pinfall, but then the other referee ruled it a disqualification, so they announced Ambrose as the champion, but then no, he's not. So Dean Ambrose does what Dean Ambrose does, and he stole the championship. Good man, Dean. I mean, at least you added some intrigue to it. But this led to Money in the Bank. We got a ladder match. So, okay, we did Hell in a Cell. Now we're going to do a ladder match between Ambrose and Rollins. And it was actually a good match. I enjoyed this ladder match for what it was, and Rollins got the win, of course, because Dean Ambrose beating Seth Rollins? No. Stupid. I'm not put over the guy you like. Are you crazy? I don't think so. So the feud took a back seat again, and we get to 2016. It's like every year we revisit it. it. And this time, in a turn of events, Money in the Bank 2016, Seth Rollins, who had been injured, he dropped the WWE Championship, forfeited it, unfortunately due to injury at the end of 2015. He made his return 2016 when Roman was the champion, and at Money in the Bank that year, we got Roman and Rollins in the main event for the title. And to the shock of literally everyone, Rollins won clean, like completely clean on Roman. And this wasn't them going like, Rollins. No, Roman failed a drug test, and this was your slap on the wrist. So unfortunately, Rollins won, but it wasn't because they wanted to do the right thing. It was because they kind of had to, because Roman was getting suspended. But Dean Ambrose actually had won Money in the Bank that night. So he came out, he cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, and now we got a new champion because Dean Ambrose cashed in on Seth Rollins and walked out with the title. It's so interesting, the history these guys have with the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. They were in that Money in the Bank ladder match. Rollins won after Ambrose was screwed over. The next year, they have a ladder match for the WWE Championship at Money in the Bank. And then the year after that, Rollins wins the title and Dean Ambrose cashes in his Money in the Bank on Seth Rollins. So they have an interesting history at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. But this led to a feud that really didn't amount to much. I think they had a title match on the draft episode of SmackDown, which I think Dean won. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't check back. You can check. Dean kept the title. I don't remember the finish. But what I do remember is they were setting up the Shield triple threat match that we had all wanted, the one that everyone said, that's a WrestleMania main event, but WWE said no. It's a Battleground main event. Battleground 2016, which actually was a kick-ass show. I'm not gonna lie, Battleground 16 kicked all kinds of ass. Sammy and Kevin had a banger on that show. Rollins, Reigns, and Ambrose, the triple threat in the main event, and Rollins didn't win this time. I know, shocker. Dean Ambrose actually retained the title and he pinned Roman, which is shocking. I guess they just really don't want Dean Ambrose to pin Seth Rollins. I don't know. But Ambrose won. He's the champion. But, you know, the feud was over at this point. Rollins now is on Raw. Dean Ambrose is on SmackDown. Ambrose is fighting Ziggler at SummerSlam. And Rollins was fighting Finn Balor for the Universal Championship that had been created. So we had kind of moved on from that feud. At least temporarily. Because can we really keep these guys away for a full year? I don't think so. SummerSlam 2017. No, they didn't fight this time. They actually didn't. Instead, this time, they told the story of them coming together as a tag team to fight the Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro. It was actually a good story they told here. I'm not gonna lie. Were they, won't they? And then they finally came together. Big moment. Finally, these guys who hate each other, they're on the same page, and they're fighting for the tag team titles at SummerSlam, and they win. Good shit. Good story. This would lead to the first of a couple rehashes of the Shield, and of the multiple they did, this was the best of the bunch. I enjoyed this run they had as tag team champions. Didn't last for too long, unfortunately, because Dean Ambrose ended up getting hurt, and then they went with Rollins and Jason Jordan as a tag team. It got all sorts of weird. TLC, it was supposed to be this very strange match between the Shield against The Miz, The Bar, Braun Strowman, and Kane in a TLC match. I know, it was very strange. But then, the curse of TLC 2017, which I'm still not fully aware, it was some sort of virus or something, but multiple people went down, including Roman Reigns. So we replaced Roman Reigns in this match with Kurt Angle. So you got Rollins and Ambrose and Kurt Angle against The Miz, The Bar, Braun Strowman, and Kane in a TLC. It was very weird, but I actually enjoyed the match, and the Shield won with their dad, Kurt Angle. Unfortunately, after this, Dean Ambrose got hurt. He was out, and then Jason Jordan took his place, and man, we're going off the rails with this feud at this point. I remember the Jason Jordan singles push. I wonder if he didn't have that neck injury, where Jason Jordan would be, because they were pushing him hard. And Jason Jordan was good, too. Like, he wasn't, like, just the flavor of the month. He was actually good. But the whole Kurt Angle's son storyline, we can all agree, was incredibly stupid. And if you're going to do that with anyone, you should have done it with Chad Gable. I don't know why you chose Jason Jordan. But then what's a SummerSlam without Rollins and Ambrose doing something together? Dean Ambrose made his return from injury. Seth Rollins was the Intercontinental Champion. Oh no, he was challenging for it. Dolph Ziggler was the champion. Right? Right. Forgive me. 2018 is mostly wiped from my memory for trauma purposes. But Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre in his corner. And instead of having it be a SummerSlam surprise, which would have been great, they had this stupid segment where Rollins cuts the promo. You got a psychopath in your corner, so I've got a lunatic in mine. And then you have a pause, and then Ambrose music hits and he comes out. And Ambrose talked about how that pissed him off. It's like, that return pop is one of the reasons you're like working so hard to come back. And they totally screwed it up because they had Rollins say lunatic, so they popped for that, and then the pause, and then the music. So they popped, but it was like a diluted pop. Like it was like split in between two. It was just really stupid, and that bothered him. I don't blame him. I think they should have just brought him in at SummerSlam as a surprise, but nevertheless, they decided not to. Seth Rollins won the IC title back, and the Shield was reunited again. Not gonna lie, this was a much worse version of the Shield, and they were trying to tell this weird story about Dean Ambrose maybe being a little off, maybe having some doubts. I don't know what the story they were trying to tell was. It was very weird. But this is where this feud goes from good to missing the bar to why are we still here to holy shit, this sucks. As we know, Roman Reigns surrendered the Universal Championship. He had his leukemia diagnosis, and he had to take some time off. It was a very emotional night. Rollins was crying. It was a tough night. And in the main event, Rollins and Ambrose defended their tag titles against, I believe it was McIntyre and Ziggler, and they lost the titles. Or no, they won the titles that night. I think they won the titles that night. Yeah, Rollins and Ambrose won the titles, and after they won, Dean Ambrose turned heel. What should have happened probably in 2014, but you know what? Rollins did good as a heel. Ambrose got over as a babyface. They just should have done that better. But this time we're getting the flip dynamic of Ambrose in his natural element as a heel, Rollins as the babyface, which could have been great, to be honest. And WWE at the time was really struggling creatively, especially with Roman going down. You need something big to hook him, and you have this. But man, did they drop the ball. And I mean, not just dropped it, but like cratered it, because this was one of the worst things WWE has ever done. For one, doing the heel turn on that night, I mean, I think it was in poor taste, but whatever. Capitalize on it, get some heat on Ambrose as a heel, that he would do it on that night of all nights. I get it. What I think was problematic about the whole thing was you had Ambrose really go in on that cancer thing, and he had that promo line. I don't even want to say it because it's that messed up. Like Roman deserved it, like something along those lines. I'm not gonna say it verbatim. It was tasteless, it was classless, it was bad, it was stupid. And that line is one of the many reasons why Ambrose left the company. Don't blame him. And they had these terrible segments. They had these Dean Ambrose. He was a generic, stupid WWE heel. He was a you people heel. He was a you people smell. I don't want to go out there because you're going to get me sick. I'm getting inoculations and shots because I can't be in your city because you people are gross. You people, you people, you people. There's nothing I hate more than a you people promo. You people promos are the worst promos in wrestling. You people heels are the worst heels in wrestling. Like, what is your purpose for being a bet? You just all of a sudden, the people, ew, I hate you. Stop. You're stupid. And this built to a match at TLC where Ambrose, believe it or not, actually got the win and got the Intercontinental Championship. But shortly after this, it was made known to the company that Ambrose was not going to re-sign, so we dropped the title. They had a triple threat match where Bobby Lashley won the Intercontinental Championship. Seth Rollins would go on to win the Royal Rumble, and he would go after Brock Lesnar, and Ambrose would be embarrassed and do jobs to Nia Jax and get bitched out by Ethan Carter III, and it was done at that point. It was over. This was a feud full of great moments, but it was not a great rivalry. It never had that defining match that really put it over the edge. It never had a defining payoff. It had bad payoffs. It should have been generation. It should have been personal. It should have been unforgettable, but as it turns out, it was just forgettable. I'll say good because they had some great moments, and I think some of the stuff in the earlier chapters of their feud in 2014 were very strong. In some of their matches in 2015, the latter match I enjoyed, so I can't say it was all bad, but the amount of missed potential, missed opportunities throughout, but particularly in the matches themselves, because a lot of the segments and build was strong, but man, they just kept hitting a wall. And it was almost like it was sabotaged. Because how can you screw this up? Everything is there. It should be so easy to make this perfect. The recipe, you have all the ingredients there. The recipe is laid out. All you have to do is not screw it up, and you screwed it up. But at the end of the day, Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins should have been one of WWE's great rivalries. Instead, it's one of their biggest missed opportunities of all time. And honestly, it's a perfect example of how WWE can take something incredible and never fully deliver on it. But I want to know what you guys thought about this feud. Let me know in the comment section below. Did you enjoy the Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose feud? Did you think it was better than I'm giving it credit for? Or did you think it was worse? Let me know. I love to hear what you guys have to say. It's always an open forum for us to discuss wrestling. At the end of the day, it's just wrestling, so it's not that deep. Let's just have fun with it. And speaking of missed opportunities, WWE has had plenty of opportunities over the years to turn wrestlers that are stars into mega stars. And there's plenty of examples where WWE has completely dropped the ball on somebody who was one night away from being one of the best in the industry and one of the brightest stars they had. And in this video right here, there's 5 examples of 5 superstars that were one night away from being megastars. So leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you on the next one.